Stellantis just can't get a break. Carlos Tavares is being asked to leave. He looks like to be retiring in early 2026, but he's already juggling a whole pile of organizational changes below him. CEOs of all of the different variants within Stellantis, from Jeep, Dodge, Ram, and everything across Europe, is all getting a second look. Stellantis is also selling their testing grounds. They're also struggling with a lot of sales, and we're looking at the average industry supply of 77 days supply. Still, Dodge and Jeep, some of the worst sellers in the Stellantis brand, are showing Jeep with about 122 days supply and Dodge sitting around 149 days supply. Both are roughly double the 77 days supply industry average based on Cox Automotive Industry data. And pulling up my data online, I'm looking at Dodge struggling with sales. When we look across the nation, 2022 and 2023 model years, there's still a showing of about 796 vehicles available in the Dodge space. Now, a lot of those are Challengers, Chargers, but a lot of them are Durangos, and we've got new old stock, and we've got 25s rolling in, and they still have 22s and 23s laying around out there. How about Jeep? Well, according to my same search, we see about 865 vehicles available across the nation in the United States of all Jeep products. The Wranglers, as well as the Jeep Grand Cherokee and beyond, and the Compass aren't selling that well either. They're clearly overpriced, and that's where the struggles have been in the last couple of years, as Stellantis has struggled with finding their price points for their vehicles, clearly marking them too high. 120 grand for an SRT, even $80,000 for a Rubicon plug-in hybrid. It seemed like way too much money, and we're seeing $100,000 plus for Jeep Grand Cherokees in top trim levels. They're clearly too much money, so Jeeps and Dodges are struggling, and they're actually starting to close production, closing plants, resulting in some layoffs. Stellantis has been trying to put together a whole collection of cost savings initiatives. Obviously, rejuggling all the CEOs, Carlos Tavares is looking at remanaging his whole group, his leadership group. But on top of that, there's discussions that he might himself be paid out early, allegedly. So he might even be hitting the road real soon. But on top of this, we're seeing a lot of vehicles just aren't selling, and incentives are coming out fast and furious. Even with that, it's clearly too late to stop the bleeding. We heard Stellantis also try to set up the initiative, the Doghouse, where they really dig in and look at some of the cost spending initiatives and try to peel back some of those costs. Obviously, things that aren't essential, like workers, like manufacturing assembly people, the people that are building these cars. Well, clearly they're looking at all kinds of cost savings initiatives because they're simply not selling their vehicles. And it's been a struggle with the 14 different brands that make up Stellantis. They're all in a world of hurt. But interestingly enough, certain brands within Europe are still holding their own, but the real struggles have been the North American brands. We see Ram has struggled for months upon months of sales, and it wasn't until really strong, aggressive incentives that we're starting to see a little bit of the product move. But Jeep has struggled with high cost of a lot of these products. They're not moving. Same thing with Dodge. Nobody wants the Hornet. It was known as one of the worst selling vehicles in the entire industry. And the Durango itself is overpriced, old, and an obsolete platform with reliability challenges. And nobody's really interested in that. There's way too many great competitions out there that a lot of these vehicles just don't seem to stand a fighting chance. Well, one of the main reasons is there's strictly too much inventory. We already said day supply is extremely high. It's more or less about double what the industry averages. And even though they feel like they've started to slow down the bleeding, they're still selling vehicles at a slow rate. They're building inventory, and these extra 2025s that were supposed to be making it to the car lots across the States and Canada, now they're looking at, Stellantis is looking at ways to maybe hold that back, stop the pain, because a lot of these sales just aren't happening. Not fast enough to make up, to obviously offset what's coming in for 25s and still get rid of the 22s and 23s. Like I said, we're seeing 800 Jeep as well as Dodge still hanging around. In 22, 23 model years, I mean, we're in 24, the end of it, and we're rolling in for 25. So how do we even have 2, 3-year-old vehicles? There's other problems that you have to think about. Lot rot, for example, where these vehicles start rotting away, and the batteries and the flat spotting, the tires, issues there. And of course, just a whole gambit of issues. You know, the oil changes aren't getting done. These vehicles aren't getting serviced or maintained. So they are in fact deteriorating right before our very eyes. So there's still a strong motivation to move these vehicles down, but Stellantis is struggling moving 23s, 22s. And of course, the 24s are still full all over the lots, and now 25s are coming. they had to come up with something because cost-cutting initiatives just weren't cutting it, and there's more to be done. How about some of the offering of the white-collar employees were offered initial voluntary buyouts? Yes, in fact, if they could get some volunteers to put up their hand, give them the buyout, say, see you later, that's part of the initial approach, is try to get some people to voluntarily leave. It makes life a little easier and it makes everybody feel a little less under duress. Some major headwinds also for Stellantis, where a lot of the workers, UAW workers, are battling with Stellantis management directly to say, you know what, you promised us to keep this plant open. The plant that was building the Ram Classic, yeah, there was promise to keep that plant open as well as expand on it and build lower cost production vehicles. They're also going to look at some battery technology to be built through there. And now it looks like that's gone away. And of course, now we're looking at layoffs. The latest is about 1,100 workers are going away, and UAW is not happy. There's all kinds of mudslinging between the two, so there's internal dispute, which doesn't help. You've got a CEO that allegedly doesn't have the same direction and focus for the North American market that the North American buyer has, and now you just have a bunch of stale product that's lacking innovation and buyers strictly do not want. So announcers by Mopar insiders actually released the fact that there are layoffs coming and some plant closures or some production stoppages coming up here right away. Stellantis went ahead and informed many workers at the Detroit Assembly Complex Jefferson plant of a temporary shutdown and layoffs coming up this week. There was a one-page note that went out that basically said, important notice of layoff and no scheduled production, which looked to be taking place between October 28th and November 1st, just to try to slow down the output of a lot of these manufactured vehicles. There's too many products on the lots and there's too much backlog still. So Stellantis is trying to find ways to slow down the output to try to give a chance to try to sell, incentivize, and push the product outside the door for existing products on the lots of every manufacturer, of every dealer across the nation. We're looking at vehicles from 2024 and older are getting pushed extremely hard right now by all of the brands of Stellantis, from Ram, Dodge, Jeep. But in this case, the vehicles impacted by this production shutdown are the Dodge Durango and the Jeep Grand Cherokee. And we just heard about this about a month ago, where there's other production stoppages for the Jeep Grand Cherokee as well as the Jeep Wrangler, two of their best-selling, most popular vehicles. And yet there was production stoppages a couple of weeks ago, and here we see it again. The writing's clearly on the wall. They're trying to cut in these stoppages just enough to give time to try to move the old product out the door, but it's not selling, not quick enough. But this production stoppage could impact as many as 5,096 workers. All of UAW local unions 7, 412, and 889 are all located at those plants. So Stellantis is actually quoted as saying, Stellantis continues to take the necessary actions to align production with sales. This includes making production adjustments at the Detroit Assembly Complex Jefferson. But this unfortunate news is nothing new for Stellantis, as they currently own about 6 of the 10 worst selling vehicles in the industry. A lot of those are the European brands like Alfa Romeo and the Giulia sedan, which looks to hold about a 617 days supply of inventory. Not selling, not well at all. But unfortunately, temporarily, we're seeing these shutdowns and plant closures and production stoppages and layoffs of manufacturing the Jeep Grand Cherokee and the Dodge Durango because they're not selling, because of the backlog of inventory, too much volume. And while these headwinds continue for Jeep and Dodge and Ram and Stellantis as a whole, but what is becoming obvious is the cost of living crisis is impacting everyone, but not everyone the same, because there still are some car manufacturers actually selling vehicles. And Stellantis has had the most difficulty in the early part of 2024 as they tried to expand and build up more inventory when all shortages were in place back in 2021 and 22, when all other car manufacturers didn't have enough volume, didn't have the product on the lots. Stellantis thought they'd be smart, fill up their lots, double down on production, increase their sale prices and their sticker prices, and now ultimately the perfect storm is brewed and they can't sell a vehicle. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.